everyone, welcome to a new series. Over the years I've discussed many a cancelled film and video game, but very few have gotten their own dedicated video. Well, this series is here to change that. Scrapped films and video games are some of my absolute favorite things to research. It's always a treat discovering stories of projects suffering with a severe case of development hell, leading to their downfall. Some, despite having everything going for them, ultimately fall from grace, resulting in them slipping into the cracks of time. Now, most of these projects typically fail from complete incompetence, and they're really funny and get me motivated to point and laugh and make a whole video talking about them. However, there are others in which are incredibly tragic, and today's video is sadly one of those topics. Rather than discuss the history of a really bad movie or a really bad movie that doesn't even exist, I wanted to revive an old topic that I've actually discussed previously on the channel. As I've stated, a lot of these topics don't really get their own dedicated video, usually ending up in a really disorganized anthology. However, today's subject did, and it was one of the only videos I had made back then that got an entire spotlight on it, and something I've been meaning to revisit for quite a while. But with all that said, let's get on with it. Sit back, grab a snack, and relax everyone, as I welcome you to the Content Crypt, where today we'll be looking into the overly complicated, economically political, and downright baffling history of Sam Max 2, the game LucasArts killed for nothing. Ain't I the king of obscurity? First with a day with SpongeBob, then freaky flickers? Am I trying to kill my channel? No, I'm just a weirdo into some really obscure crap. Though I guess Freelance Police isn't really that obscure in today's day and age. I'm sure most of you who clicked on this video already know who the titular Sam and Max are. But for those who don't, I feel obligated to give you some context. Their history is pretty crucial into understanding the project's death. So you know those characters who appear in Poker Night? No, not that guy. Or them. They don't even show up in Poker Night. That's just a giraffe. There we go, yeah, them. That Shanus K9 and hyperkinetic rabbity thing are none other than the freelance police duo known as Sam and Max, two kooky characters created by one Steve Purcell, a cartoonist and animator well known for his work at Fish Wrap, LucasArts, and more recently Pixar. Steve came about Sam and Max through his younger brother. He drew these comics about these two anthropomorphic detectives who often fought crime, and usually left his comics unfinished, and Steve would often go in and finish them for him, drawing the characters as crudely as his brother did, just to piss him off. This is why Sam and Max usually blatantly point out what they're doing or what's directly in front of them. It was all due to how poorly written his brother's comics were. This is what really birthed Sam and Max, and to an extent, Steve's style and sense of humor. As for the series, Sam and Max is essentially an absurdist comedy. They're what they call themselves the freelance police, these two detectives who take on cases that nobody in their right mind would ever think of tackling. Sam, being the level-headed of the two, is an Irish wolfhound with a big gray suit and hat, while his partner Max is a psychotic little bunny rabbit and is considered the loose cannon of the two. With instructions given by their faceless commissioner, the duo usually find themselves in absurd situations that often end up in greater chaos than when they found it. After graduating from college and hopping from one freelance comic gig to another, Steve got an opportunity to publish Sam and Max as an official comic series with the help of Fish Wrap Productions. And while not many comics were published at the studio, the characters popped up sporadically throughout the late 80s and early 90s, eventually becoming staples of LucasArts' The Adventurer newsletter, which would feature Sam and Max spoofing the latest game being released at the time, such as Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, Star Wars X-Wing, and my personal favorite, Full Throttle. The characters eventually became like pseudo-unofficial mascots at the studio, to the point where they would use Sam and Max as characters in animation testing at LucasArts' training program. This is real, check this out. However, it wasn't until 1993 that the characters finally got their big breakout hit and Sam and Max hit the road. If you're ever to get into the series, I think Hit the Road is the perfect place to start. It has a funny story, sharp dialogue, and witty, albeit dated, puzzles. As far as I'm concerned, it's a front-to-back classic, and it perfectly captures Steve's strange, demented comics so well. Now with that said, Hit the Road was a smash hit, and it quickly became one of LucasArts' most iconic titles during the time. So of course it's no surprise that the Freelance Police would be getting a sequel. Right? Before I can discuss the development of Freelance Police, I need to briefly discuss a Sam and Max game that actually fell through the cracks sometime before LucasArts picked the rights up again. Yeah, LucasArts doesn't actually own the rights to Sam and Max. It's all in Steve's hands, which is why another studio before them was actually going to tackle a potential follow-up. although there's even less information about this one specifically. It was originally announced in September of 2001 as Sam Max Plunge Through Space, planned to be developed by a small startup studio by the name of Infinite Machine, and it was comprised of former LucasArts developers. Now, instead of it being a traditional point-and-click game like Hit the Road, the project was envisioned as a 3D action-adventure game where you would play as Sam directly, and it was planned for the original Xbox. While the aforementioned details are pretty sparse, some concept art can be found online, as well as a general premise given by Purcell himself, where he states the following.
It was actually based on a story I had written years before called Sam Max Plunge Through Space. Sam and Max have to recover the stolen Statue of Liberty, which they find parked in another galaxy and being used as a casino called Green Mama's. Then they are pulled into interplanetary intrigue with an evil despot and a mysterious hidden world where everyone resembles Max. We were breaking it down into an action, exploration, adventure game, and I was pleased with where it was going. It was a lot heavier on adventure than action. It was intended to be more of a hybrid, giving you the story and characters of a point-and-click adventure, but with the pacing of a 3D platformer. You'd have control Sam directly, moving around environments about the size of an FPS level, solving item-based puzzles, and getting into dialogue exchanges. Enemies would wander the level, so you could always go back and shoot and or beat them up. I remember that we spent a good bit of time trying to figure out how to do shooting without overcomplicating the targeting interface, before we remembered that it's Sam and Max, and accuracy is kind of irrelevant. We were hoping to have a platformer without shallow characters or annoying jumping puzzles, and an adventure game without the feeling that nothing happens when you get stuck. The best part of having a pitch go unpublished is that I can say that we solved every problem, and it would have worked perfectly if only it had gone made.
The project basically died because the studio couldn't fund it. This was mainly due to the first title they published, New Legends, selling like complete dog shit. With that, the studio would go 6 feet under, and it gave LucasArts the opportunity to once again snag back the game rights and begin development on a true follow-up to Hit the Road. The game was officially announced on August 27th of 2002, with Mike Stemley returning to the project as the lead and director. Now, for those unaware, Mike has had his thumbs in many a LucasArts pie during the time, with Hit the Road being one of them. And while many of Hit the Road's devs joined in to help with the project, Steve Purcell himself wasn't one of them. He'd become too busy working at Pixar, but he did remain as a visual and storytelling consultant for the game, offering some tidbits of concept art. On May 12th of 2003, the game was properly revealed at E3 as Sam and Max Freelance Police, with an entire cinematic trailer being shown. Take a look.
In a world where evil lurks around every corner, where villains rule the streets with impunity, and hope is a 4-letter word, a mighty force for justice will return, and heaven help the guilty.
You crack me up, little buddy. Commissioner, how's the rash?
Why won't you just die? This is so degrading.
Shut up and dance. Holy bouncing Buddha, Max. We're in 3D.
It's been done.
While there isn't much to be said about it, this trailer and a few promotional materials that followed are some of the only publicly known materials we have from the game. Following Freelance Police's reveal, LucasArts confirmed that the game would have a set release of spring 2004. The plot of the game is complicated, to say the least. From what's publicly known online, the game would have followed Sam and Max having to crack 6 separate cases wide open, with the game's main plot tying them all together for one grand finale. Funnily enough though, Sam actually makes a direct callback to the game's plot in a dialogue exchange from Poker Night 2, which was of course written by none other than Mike Stemley himself.
I'll raise that. Are you sure it was a good idea to bring the bunny? I think he's throwing you off your game.
Good idea or not, I'm keeping my eye on Max until this Chosen One crisis blows over.
Chosen One?
Last night, Max and I were mopping up some trouble at the St. Swithin's dance over at William Henry Harrison High.
Oh, there was pig's blood everywhere.
All of a sudden, the Honor Society went into a trance and began a suspiciously well-choreographed musical number.
They are possessed by Rogers and Hammerstein. Get it? I've seen a few shows.
Actually, it had more of a Sondheim feel.
At the climax of the chorus, they all pointed at us and started chanting about the Chosen One.
You think Max is the chosen one?
Max is always the Chosen One. If I had $1 for every time Max has been the focal figure of an apocalyptic doomsday cult, internet virus, or ancient prophecy, I wouldn't be gambling away my jerky money tonight.
My face is a universal symbol of death and destruction.
So I'm keeping my eye on him until we can figure out where this is going.
While 6 cases were planned for the main game, many devs from Freelance Police had suggested that other cases and episodes were initially planned after the game would be released, that you could download via LucasArts' official website. It also had minigames in each case. Apparently it had 19 in total according to this PC Gamer coverage on the game. Be able to replay them with this disgusting thing. His name's Gatto, or the genial yet troubling gaming organism. What is with these devs and like really weird acronyms? It really seemed like the game was going to be jam-packed with content. Stemley even later lamented on how ambitious the game was becoming. And I mean, yeah, sounds like it. 6 cases with their own storylines, dialogue, minigames, and they all plan on making more after release? You know, as I was doing research for this game, it really felt like the more I read through the development of Freelance Police, it occurred to me that perhaps the team bit off more than they could chew. Was this the game's downfall? Believe it or not, it wasn't. The game was actually going really smooth. Hell, according to Mike, it was the fastest development cycle he'd ever worked on. To quote him from PC Zone's October 2005 issue, "I can honestly say it's the fastest project I've ever worked on. Of course, nearly every seat was filled by hotshot game-building veterans, so that probably had something to do with it. Of course, as we all know, that wouldn't last much longer." Sometime around March of 2004, nearly 2 years after the game was announced, LucasArts made the infamous decision to halt production on Sam Max Freelance Police. Now you're probably thinking, why did they do this? Well, the answer's simple. The short of it was simply down to business politics and a shakeup within the company. After the president of LucasArts, Simon Jeffrey, had stepped down, there was a period in which management believed a restructuring was in order. The studio believed that any non-Star Wars projects being developed at the time just simply weren't profitable. How did the team take this? Well, according to Stemley, he was called in by some higher-ups and told that the adventure game market literally ceased overnight. I'm sure all those factors had something to do with it. All I know is I was brought into a small meeting room and told in uncertain terms that the entire European adventure game market had literally disappeared. There was 100,000 of them one year, and the next, nada. To this day, I wonder if the game was cancelled due to a rounding error or some sort of half-assed European preview of the Rapture. While I could go into excruciating detail to cover a lot of the team's thoughts on the matter, I'll spare you those details. The point is, Sam Max 2 was dead, and the team was extremely disappointed. They were just as shocked as the general public to hear this news. Production was going so smoothly, but just wasn't meant to be. Those tax write-offs at LucasArts were just too tempting to say otherwise. The cherry on top of this shit Sunday, most of the team involved, who were working on the game, just laid off shortly after production was cancelled, aside from a few members such as Stemley, who stayed on for a few more months to write dialogue for what else? Star Wars titles. Just lovely. I'm sure you could imagine that fans didn't take this very well. A lot were rightfully pissed this project never reached the finish line, especially since most of the press had claimed it was nearly done. Tons clamored for this game to get an official release. Petitions were made, and one of which nearly had 40,000 signatures in protest of the game's cancellation. Alas, it just wasn't enough for the company to change its mind. Freelance Police was dead, and that was LucasArts' final decision. As sad as it is that the game never came to be, there is a silver lining behind all of this. Telltale Games. Yeah, believe it or not, Sam Max 2's cancellation was a massive contributing factor to the creation of TT, as many of the OG heads of Telltale were some of the main developers involved with Sam Max 2. Soon after Telltale was formed, the team got their closure with Sam Max in 2006, when Save the World was officially announced for PC and consoles. 6-episode season that followed the Freelance Police as they solved 6 loosely related cases, all eventually tying themselves together for one major finale. Reminds you of something, doesn't it? It was even digitally distributed via GameTap. It was another time. As well as Wii Shop, PlayStation Network, and the Xbox Live Arcade. Something the team really thought would work even back when Freelance Police was still in production. They really believed episodes beyond the Package 6 could have been sold digitally via an online distributor. Something LucasArts just didn't really have much faith in. In a sense, Sam Max 2 walked so the rest of the adventure game genre could run, and thanks to Telltale, could evolve. Honestly, it's beautiful in a sense. A true Shakespearean tragedy with a pseudo-bittersweet ending. And with that said, that's the complete story of Sam Max Freelance Police. But does it have to be? Now, throughout the retrospective, I've mentioned a handful of times that this game was nearly finished. For me personally, that begs the question. If the game was 90% finished, where'd it go? All these assets and resources have to go somewhere, right? You're probably thinking to yourself, Bones, you lobotomized, soylent, guzzling chud! The game is probably locked away in a LucasArts vault somewhere, never to be seen again. Well, that's very likely. I like to subscribe to another theory. Allow me to propose a question, guys. How likely is it that a lot of the old heads who worked on this game still have materials of it in their possession? Surely some do, right? I don't even really think this needs to be debated. We know some do. Take Karen Purdy, for example, an artist and background designer on Freelance Police. If you take a gander over at our art station, you'll find that she has a lot of background assets from the game shown. Or how about Joe White, one of the character animators who has shared several test animations he did throughout the game's development, such as this scene of Max literally shredding his bare ass on a paper shredder. This is my favorite aspect of the game's development, by the way. Point being, if these people have materials from the game, how far of a stretch would it be to say that some of them probably have a playable build of it on a hard drive somewhere? This is the same line of thinking I had with Curly's Adventure, another point and click I talked about on the channel. Only difference being with Curly was that there was a playable demo of it, and a lot of the devs from the project had it and dumped it online, specifically to Internet Archive. So I suppose I have that same line of thinking with Freelance Police. Who's to say one of the devs is just sitting on a
fully playable beta of Sam Max, Freelance Police,
and just never really thought to tell anybody? Well, that's the question I wanted to get to the bottom of for this video. When I first started making this project, the genesis of it came from one simple goal: to confirm if one of the Freelance Police devs have a playable build of the game. And believe it or not, you'd be surprised to hear that the answer may be hiding in plain sight. Now, I've been between a rock and a hard place with this script for some time now. This project started life in early February after I just wrapped up A Day with SpongeBob. After writing everything and I began working on the audio, something happened. I didn't like how any of it sounded. It sounded like fucking shit. Not because it was bad, but for me, I realized I missed something. While I go into extreme detail recounting the story of the project and its inevitable demise, I barely touch on any of the actual efforts to track this thing down. It was something that I failed to really touch on in the original Sam Max video. I basically ended up making the exact same project, just with slightly better production quality. And while that might seem good enough to some people, for me it wasn't. If I was going to go out of my way to rework this project, the least I could do is actually make an effort to search for it myself. Wow, a lost media content creator actually doing investigative research in a lost media subject? What a concept! If only more people actually did that. My only roadblock was, well, a handful of things. Despite my love for talking about this kind of shit, I suck at investigating. I don't think we need to bring up the Earthworm Jim hunt of 2021. Dear God, the horror. Of course, nowadays I'm more sharper and wise when it comes to stuff like this, so perhaps I'm not giving myself enough credit. This is also around the time where a friend of mine, Sewer Reviewer, was starting his own server-wide hunt. For those unaware, the Lost Media Wiki Discord server used to host these public lost media investigations that anyone could join in, dubbed On the Hunts. Emphasis on used to, however, as sadly they scrapped them a few years back. Reasons were never really clear as to why from what I hear, but from what I've gathered, they just became a bitch to manage, and most of them ended up becoming cold cases pretty quickly. So why am I bringing all of this up? Well, Stewart, saddened by the lack of current On the Hunts, decided to host his very own in a private lost media server we're in, as a way to get more folks invested in the space again. He ended up making a suggestion box where people could submit their ideas for a new topic. Now, at this point in time, the Sam Max script was pretty much on the back burner, as I was more focused on the Freaky Flickers video. But seeing this channel opened up was just too good of an opportunity for me to miss out on. So, I went ahead and made my case. And to save you the spiel, Sam Max won. To say the least, I was super excited. This rush of enthusiasm and mania about the topic was once again coursing through my veins. I actually felt motivated to finish the video again. And now that I've got the backing of my friends, much more manpower and new perspectives on the case, we might actually get a chance of getting this thing found. For once, I was actually getting people invested in a lost media subject I was actually invested in. It felt great, though things did start small. Me, Bray, and Sewer were the only folks involved in the investigation as of now. Both Bray and Sewer didn't really have much context on Sam Max or this game when we started, so I had to fill them in on a lot of things, much as what we discussed in today's video. Our small team aside, we got to work making a document full of names to help us in contacting developers on the project. Now, we started with the big fish first. I felt since we already had their contact info, we may as well shoot for the top, and we'll go from there. I already tried contacting Stanley earlier in the year, and even earlier during the making of my original video, but still, no answer. We started the search with 3 big heads from the project: Dan Connors, the lead producer, Kevin Bruner, the lead programmer, and Grant Animal, the lead animator. Sorry if I butchered those names. Bray messaged Kevin, Sewer did Dan, and I did Graham. Emails were sent out, and a few weeks later, nothing. Perhaps we should dig deeper into that pile of names while we wait on those 3. So I picked out Randy Tudor, the gameplay engineer, Richard Sun, another programmer, and Derek Sakai, the lead artist. Those emails went out, Another week later goes by, and nothing. A bit frustrated, I went ahead and sifted through the list once more and found Karen Purdy, the very same environmental artist and background designer I mentioned previously. After grabbing her email listed in the document, I sent that away, and email unavailable. Becoming quite clear to me why I had such a hard time with these lost media investigations. It's just not very common for people nowadays to reach back out to you about these sort of things. Back then, hunting and reaching out to people was so much more common. Hunts would end in a matter of weeks due to how communicative the folks were who worked on these projects. To be fair though, the game has been dead for several decades now, and maybe these folks probably just didn't have much to add or share about the game's development anymore. Perhaps any hope of getting a playable build of this game is just too far-fetched of a pipe dream. These guys surely don't have anything crazy like, I don't know, like the source code to Freelance Police in their possession, and would as a result make them hush-hush about anything related to the game? Yeah, right? Okay, we're gonna have to talk about this now. Recently, Mike Stemley was interviewed by a YouTuber by the name of Tech Support with Daniel Albu, a content creator who's interviewed several LucasArts alumni over the years. In the said interview, Dan wasn't shy to ask Mike about his time on Freelance Police, in which he asked several questions. I want to be the first to say to check this video out after this one. Link will be in the description. It seriously was an invaluable resource for the research of today's video, and honestly its biggest driving force. While Dan and Mike go into detail about Mike's time at the company, and give in-depth details about the game, Dan asks something that almost every single Sam and Max fan since then has been wondering for decades.
Did anyone keep a copy of the source code of this game? Will it ever be released?
I have been reliably informed that there are some people who have entire copies of all of the resources for Sam & Max Freelance Police. I would not have any copies because that would mean that I took intellectual property from LucasArts back in the day and saved it for myself.
Okay.
No, but seriously, yeah, there are copies floating around of all of the source. And as far as it ever coming out, that'd be hard, man. You'd have to rebuild the engine. You'd have to somehow rebuild the engine. You'd have to hire artists to come in and finish all the art, and scripters to do all the, Lua scripting. You'd probably have to cut all of the lame jokes that don't work at all anymore. Although I think all the Burning Max jokes probably still land. It could happen someday. If it does, I would like to be involved.
However, there is a catch. So essentially, Mike confirms he, and potentially a few others, do in fact have the entire source code in their possession. This doesn't surprise me, we've known this for quite some time, let's be real here. It makes sense, he was the game's director, after all. But what those weren't entirely clear. I remember reading a while ago that he had cutscenes burned onto a DVD or something, but I'll have to find where I heard that. There were also a few other details that he cleared up. Specifically how the game wasn't actually 90% complete, but more or less 60%. He also mentions how the game would take a team of animators and programmers with an understanding of the script to actually finish the project if that were to ever happen. Now, real quick, if you've seen the Resident Evil and Rayman communities, you'll know that an unfinished build of a video game won't stop the fanbase from finishing what the original developers had started. Speaking of Rayman, the Reborrowed Project, an initiative to finish the 40% build of Rayman 4 to a more finished state, is in active development right now, and it's thanks to that leaked code of the game that's making it possible. My point being, whether the game is 90 or 60 or 40 or whatever percent complete, the dedicated Sam & Max fanbase could and will likely finish what the team at LucasArts had started back then. That is, if they were given the necessary materials to do so. Wink, wink. Was that subtle enough? Though to give him credit, I get where Mike is coming from and what he's trying to say. Even if the game did make its way online, it would require a lot of work before it could be in any sort of playable state. However, a big reason why he's been so hesitant on releasing any materials from the game, even though he has every right to, he directed the damn game, is because technically speaking, the Freelance Police project and all of its materials legally belong to LucasArts, and by extension, the Walt Disney Company. Even though I doubt Disney would give a damn if a canned project they had no involvement in got leaked to the general public, I get where Mike is coming from. I'm not saying the game even needs to be leaked. Personally, I think it would be cool if it got some sort of official release if it were given that chance, even though I doubt that would ever happen. But anyway, I'm getting way off topic. Back to the investigation. Now that we have context for where the build currently lies, we're at a pretty complicated crossroad here. From what Mike is saying, it's pretty clear to me that a handful of the people who worked on the game potentially have it, and could be why we've yet to hear anything back from the devs involved. It's frustrating to say the least. Not even a "I don't have anything, go away," just pure utter silence. However, at the end of the day, I can't be too mad, and I can't force these people to respond to my emails. You just gotta take it by the chin, and you have to keep trucking through, which is what I plan on doing. While getting a build of the game is unlikely, we currently have our sights on something much more tangible. Let's go back at those magazines, huh? If you pay close attention to them, you'll see a lot of screenshots shown overlap each other from the same scene. This has always irked me. Why are there two separate shots of Sam of this exact angle in his office, just one with the UI showing? Why does this exist? These screenshots tell me another story, that these aren't just pre-shot and given to the press for publication. These had to have been taken from video footage of the game. Perhaps one of these magazines has B-roll from it archived? While I can't with 100% confidence say that this is the case, it's something that we'll continue to look into. And if you, my friend, want to get in on the search, I suggest joining the Lost Media Wiki forum thread for the topic I made some time ago, which hasn't gotten a single response. Maybe you'll find something we haven't yet. But as of now, our current goal is to simply find any footage from the game archive, just anything video footage related, because believe it or not, there is no actual documented gameplay footage of this game in action. At the very least, I want to get that shit found. Anything additional is gravy. I'd love for more people to become invested in the topic, and maybe this video will convince you to join us in on the search. But until we find more materials for Freelance Police, the hunt continues. With all that in mind, that's really all I have for you guys today. If you have any information about this game, any leads, materials you'd like to share with me, please feel free to drop by the Lost Media Wiki forum thread. I'll leave a link in the description of this video. If you'd like to reach me more directly, I'll also be leaving my email down below, and if you have any suggestions for another tale of unbridled development incompetency, leave it in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. Special thanks from Jason and Mix and Mojo, the site I primarily use for the research of this video. There's this fantastic memoir on Sam Max 2 that's literally such a fantastic read, and it really puts you in the perspective of a fan during the time. Jason's research is seriously invaluable work, and I'll be leaving that in the description as well if you guys want to read it for yourselves. Seriously, it's a fantastic read. Speaking of the article, I'd like to end this video with its final excerpt. Freelance Police could have come out, period. It would not have required some costly stand on principle on the parts of LucasArts honchos, but merely thinking that it was less narrow than an angstrom. Even from a dollars and cents perspective, the executive order doesn't truthfully make dispassionate business sense, on the one level of which it was supposed to be justifiable. The explanation that Sam Max 2 was canceled out of a kind of ruthless efficiency so that the talent could be reassigned to more lucrative projects is more than weak. It was mooted. The team was dispersed anyway by massive layoffs and migrations that were part of an immediate internal transition that followed. LucasArts spent plenty of money, heck of a lot more than shipping a nearly complete adventure game that would have come to, trying to build itself up over again as an internal developer under Jim Ward, and again under Daryl Rodriguez, and again and again and again. In an alternate timeline where the studio simply finished up what they started with Freelance Police, then things would have realistically played out exactly the same, with no meaningful difference in terms of resources or expanded or earned, nor the company's ultimate fate. The difference would have simply been that a good project wouldn't have been gratuitously gone in the trash can on top of it all. LucasArts, as an adventure game developer, may have had to die. It just didn't have to be murdered.
Stick a fork in, open wide. Everyone is Max inside, full of colorful guts and habits. Cryptic world of cryptic rabbits.